Hey everybody, Nick here, and today we're going to do a little disassembly and maintenance on this very interesting little knife here. This is the Wilson Combat Eagle made by Les George. So yeah, let's go ahead and take this little guy apart. In the name of full disclosure, I've taken this little guy apart before, so I know what we're going to find in there, but it is interesting and worth showing out. At some level, it's a very simple knife. I mean, you've got 3 screws, basically. This guy, and then this guy. And then if you want to change the clip, you can do that. But these screws go straight into the titanium. There's simple standoffs in the back there. And the pivot, I believe, is fixed on one side. So there's not a whole lot going on here, but yeah, I can always respect that when it's done well. Pop those little guys out there. You can see these back spaces aren't shouldered or anything, so they'll just fall themselves right out of there. Put that there. Okay, now for the pivot, you actually need, these were T8 screws, by the way. For the pivot, you actually need a weirder size, which is T15. Torx T15 screws are not super common, but you know what? They work. So there we go. And with that, the knife is now disassembled, and we can see already a little bit of ugly here, which is these Teflon washers. Like I said, this knife was disassembled recently, so there's not a whole lot of you know, built up gunk and whatnot on there. But you can see that this knife is running on 2 different Teflon washers. The 2-part isn't unusual, but what is unusual is sort of the quality here. I mean, you can see that they're punched through, and usually when that happens, and again, I'm not Les George, I don't know exactly why that went on, but usually that happens in order to let the lubrication kind of flow through. So there's a little bit of a pocket, if you will, for that lube to get in there. And that's fine, that's no problem. I gotta say, though, for the price, the fact that these are Teflon washers is, in and of itself, a little bit weird. I mean, I love the idea of washers with a good detent flipper, and sure, great. But these washers, and then especially the fact that they're not even punched out right, I don't know, that's driving me a little crazy. The other thing I'd love to work on here is the lock stick on this knife. This knife, unfortunately, has crazy amounts of lock stick. And so what I'm going to do here in order to try and deal with that, basically, is to try and just make sure I dry off this surface. I'm going to apply another layer of Sharpie. This is quite literally just a permanent marker. But it is, in my opinion, one of the very best tools in the war against lock stick. And so that'll help maybe a little bit as well. But we can see that overall, construction here is very simple. You have an internal stop pin, which is right here, and takes you from here down to here. In its closed position, it's pretty far away from the back spaces. Yeah, we're not going anywhere near those, and because they are grooved in the center, you're not going to have a problem there, and that's pretty much it. And then it's just got these 2 washers of a sort, and there you go. So, actually, you know what? There's not all that much else to highlight here. I have cleaned off and I reapplied the Sharpie down here. I'm going to go ahead and give one more coat because, oh my God, let's see if we can do this. I haven't been able to knock it down in the past, but I'm hoping that maybe, just maybe, I'll be able to do that. And I'm actually not going to lubricate the detent ball path at all because maybe that's contributing slightly to the stick, although generally speaking that's not a factor. In order to reassemble the knife, it's a little bit fiddly because not only are these back spaces not shouldered, or I'm sorry, the standoffs, they're not shouldered in any way, so they don't sit into there, and so they don't want to stay in position. But also it's the case that these screws go straight through from one side and into the titanium on the other side. That is, well, that's certainly a choice he made. Yeah. The biggest question for this review, not to give too much of a spoiler here, is the price on this knife. This is a $525 knife, which I personally, I'm not sure I agree with that assertion. But whatever it is, you know, seeing this guy taken apart really does serve to inform that decision-making process. Again, hashtag spoiler alert. But, yeah, so there we go. And then I'm going to put the pivot screw in here, but I got to pop the pivot loose, I think, for everything to seat itself properly here. Not to pop the pivot, I got to pop the lock bar loose here. There we go. And we're popped in. So, we are nowhere near tight enough yet. There we are. And I'm kind of suspecting that maybe... Okay, that's way too tight, and it's still lock sticky. Let's go ahead. I'm actually going to back off those rear screws here. Look, it's a pretty knife. That you can't argue with. No, those aren't holding a lot of tension. All right. Sometimes if you tighten something in the back before you tighten in the front, it can have weird consequences here. Right now it is just too tight, so I'll go ahead and loosen the pivot a little bit here. Hopefully we'll be able to reduce the... Okay, that's reasonable. There is only slight blade play. Tighten that up a little bit more. Blade play is more or less gone. Flipping action is okay. It's not a quick flipper, but you know what? It's okay. And for being on Teflon, the action is remarkably good. What that means is that the detent here is spectacular. And it's able to store up enough energy to overcome the Teflon. So, I mean, at that level, it is a marvel of modern knife making. But, you know, that's maybe a little harsh, but still. And I want to see if I can get this blade centered, because it isn't right now. And the way I'm going to try and do that is just by loosening and then, while applying a little bit of pressure into the blade in the direction I want it to go, retightening. Sometimes that can actually play a role. Centering is now better, but let's see if it stays that way. Actually, it did stay that way. It's maybe a hair off, but it's enough that I don't care. And actually, practically speaking, there you go. That's pretty good. All right, it is still lock sticky though. All that sharpening in the world just wasn't able to save that. That's just a fact of life sometimes with some knives. Not a great fact, but it is a fact indeed. So anyways, there you go. That's your Wilson Combat Eagle here, disassembled and maintained and running better than when we started, which is good. But yeah, keep an eye out for a full review coming up here soon of this very interesting little knife. Alrighty, I hope this has been interesting. Have yourself a wonderful rest of your day. Bye now.